All right, guys, there's an art to knowing when to find your players. And it really is an art. It's not so much like a science. At least I've never seen anything from anybody pointing to there being a certain correct way or incorrect way to do this in Football Manager. You just kind of got to have a feeling for it. So the general idea behind this is that you want to find your players for poor performances in a match and that they really should have performed better in. That's the first thing you have to keep in mind when you're looking at players playing poorly. If you're playing against a team that's just a lot better than you and you're completely outmatched, finding your players isn't going to do any good. But if it's a match that you know that you need to win and they don't do their job, you probably should consider a fine. So the match that we saw yesterday was extremely frustrating, as you'll recall. We had the momentum. We had a huge XG, and yet we tied 2-2, and we only drew because of the good play by Zhen Zhaoan. When this sort of thing happens, it's the time to really bring the fines out. Because honestly, we should have done a lot better than that. So what I do here is I go to the match report, click there at the bottom right, and at least here on FM23, you click then on player statistics. This is not very well organized at all, by the way. This is an absolute mess because this should be closer over to this. This is not really, designed all that well. You can't do anything with anything. You can't change the stats you're looking at. This is failure on the part of Sports Interactive. Now, if you look over here on the right side, you'll see these match ratings. We don't have anybody who had like a really abysmal match, but some of these are bad. 6.6 is like average, right? Usually, I will fine players for a 6.4 rating or below, and my rule of thumb is that if you're 6.4 or 6.3, you'll get a 1 week fine. If you're 6.2 or below, you get a 2 week fine. You have to be careful with 2 week fines because that's a good way to get players to get really upset with you, to destroy clubhouse cohesion, and to get players asking to be traded or to be sold. But sometimes that's actually what should happen, and that will get rid of problems. 1 week fines usually don't result in this. If you have players who are upset about being fined a week's wages because of poor performance, there's usually a different problem going on. That's usually a sign, honestly, of poor professionalism, which is one of the hidden attributes in Football Manager that is so important. So, you want to pay attention to that. I know right at the start, as I find Cho Truyuan, he's going to get really upset with it once we move to the next screen. First thing we're going to do is we're going to speak about him for his poor last game, and your goalkeeping was not good, and then we will usually speak again. We'll look and see what his form has been like recently. Actually, it's been pretty good. You don't want to criticize recent form if it's actually been good. And then afterwards, we will levy the 1 week fine. Now, we're not going to know what kind of impact the fine had until we advance the game. We do the same thing with these other players. So Hu Truyuan played really poorly. We know that, and we will also fine him. The reason why you want to fine these guys is because you can increase a player's determination by scolding them and telling them that they did poorly and fining them as well for playing badly. And it can also have other sort of good side effects when it comes to player development and things like that. Also, you get money for your club. We're not like desperate for money right now. Yeah, not in this club at least. That's more than Manchester United save. But the other thing you want to do is you want to make it very, very clear to your team. All right, well, we'll transfer list you. We probably could actually just totally get rid of Zhou Hongyi. Yeah, that's kind of interesting that he reacted so poorly to that. That's the other thing that you're looking for, by the way, which is players who will tell you that, oh, I did really well in this match, even though it's pretty clearly they didn't. You can take it the way you want to. There's always a way to get out of the argument, just leave the player alone. But usually if a player is arguing with you, that is a sign that there's a big problem with this player and that you probably should not want to have him on your team anymore. If they play poorly in a match and then they argue with you and say that, no, they didn't play poorly and that it's somebody else's fault, that's a sign. Nene is the other one, that's right, who... I guess I fined him before. This is another thing that happens. Sometimes you'll be unable to fine a player because you already fined him 2 weeks or something like that. So you have to sort of watch out for stuff like that. It's funny, Menegong didn't like big matches. He played well in that match. I don't understand why Nene played so poorly. So then we'll click on proceeding forward, and Cho Truyuan, this is no surprise, is really upset because I fined him. He was surprised already. See, has been treated unfairly too many times by his manager, which means that we're probably going to just release him. Surely you don't want to leave a team as good as ours. Yeah, this is a big question. So before I decide to tell him that we're just going to can him, I'm going to take a quick look over here. He has the ability to play, and he comes up as a better goalkeeper than Wu Shengjie, who's the other one that is competing for that spot. I would prefer not to get rid of him, so we're going to tell him to just do his job here and see what we can do. What we might end up doing, yeah, we're happy that he's leaving, whatever. We might end up doing here, since this can have a negative impact on the squad, is we'll just put him over to the under-18 squad, and then we'll stop registering him. That's probably the best thing to do at this moment with Cho Choo-yuan. And we might look and see if we can't find another keeper who will take his place, hopefully somebody young. But he's clearly not ready to play at this level. We don't want to completely get rid of him, though, and the reason why is because he's got, it looks like at least he has a lot of good upside, and we don't want to give a good player over to one of the other teams. You can see Hu Chuan accepts is fine, Chen Yuting accepts is fine, Cai Yuting accepts is fine, right? That's what you really want to see, right? If they're accepting, they're fine. Sometimes it will say something like, they're going to try better in future matches or something like that. That's a sign that the determination is going to go up. But yeah, if they're accepting, they're fine after they did something that was wrong and they're not fighting with you and stuff, that's kind of ideal. Often, especially if you find 2 weeks' wages, no matter how bad their performance was, they'll be upset about it, and they'll get in a grumpy state for a little while or something. The one thing you really want to watch out for, though, is here on the dynamics, which is where somebody's really upset about something and it lingers and it lasts for a while. You want to be careful because you want to make sure that you don't end up with the players that oppose you here on your hierarchy, or players that are actually influential in their social groups opposing you as well. For the most part, it's not going to happen. Probably not going to happen to this club because I've been around for so long. A lot of these players know me as a manager, but it's something to watch out for. And that's the art of finding your players. It's not the most fun thing in the world to do in this game. It's a lot more fun to win, but you're not going to win every match. And when you lose or you draw a match that you really should have won, and it's obvious that you should have won, that's when the fines really need to come out. Interesting, we've had 2 draws in a row, which makes me wonder about the heart of some of these players, and I might start calling them out. We got a big match coming up tomorrow against Athletic Club Taipei, so join me for that one. I'll talk with you again tomorrow. See you then. Bye.